Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Hour number 2 coming your way live here, 101.5 FM, 720 AM, K-Dawn, the talk of Las Vegas. Chris Wynn is in live studio, in for Brian Shapiro. A little bit under the weather today. JD Sharp also live in studio. You can catch us on our YouTube channel at the Vegas Take, and you can see our faces along with hear our voices there. So in the bottom of the hour, we'll have Gerald Gillick joining us. He's an attorney here in town. We're going to talk, JD, about some malpractice lawsuits because there's some strange ones out there, my friend. There's some scenarios that are just way beyond the norm when it comes to some of these lawsuits and some of the infractions that actually take place with some of these defendants. So we'll talk to him about that. Of course, we have George Chanos joining us in the 11 o'clock hour. He's the former Nevada Attorney General. Very interesting political background for our former Nevada Attorney General in George, and we're going to talk to him about that. Also talk about him with him all things politics here in the present. But joining us now here on the phone lines, he is a big-time friend of the show. He is a Hollywood producer, and he happens to be a conservative. And he joins us a lot here in the Vegas Take. Mr. X joining us here on the phone lines. Mr. X, the reason we call him Mr. X is because the guy would get a lot of lambasting. He would catch a lot of heat working in that industry
he would get,
as a conservative if he would come out and express his views openly. It would be very tough for Mr. X.
He would get Vince Vaughn, basically.
He would get Vince Vaughn.
I would be the next Vince Vaughn. I'm glad that we added another one to our secret army here, man. This is great. I'm excited.
We got to get your take on this, Mr. X, because, look, Vince Vaughn has made waves on the internet after spending some time with President Trump during the national title game last night. Now, we know Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn's a guy.
Go ahead.
Vince Vaughn's a guy who, look, he's made no attempt to kind of hide his libertarian. As JD pointed out, he's a libertarian, and he has some conservative political views as well, too. And he was, exchanging pleasantries with the president, the first lady, and, it was enough to, they were saying it was setting fire to the internet, Mr. X. Got to get your thoughts as far as Vince Vaughn, one of my favorite actors of all time. And is this really preposterous that he's spending some time with President Trump and the first lady?
No. Here's the thing. This is what's wrong with liberals in America. Seriously. Being friendly to the other side would make things so much more congenial and make this country so much less divisive. I don't care if Robert De Niro or Ron Perlman or, any of these mega libs were talking to Donald Trump. I would be happy. From the same perspective, I wouldn't care at all if, John Voight was seen talking to Bernie Sanders. I would be encouraged that people are actually willing to speak to someone on the other side and avoid this crazy media-driven divisiveness. Who cares if Vince Vaughn was talking to Donald Trump? A, who knows what they were talking about? B, great. We're all humans. When you're at the grocery store and somebody with a vastly different political view, bumps into your shopping cart, you're not going to start hitting them or something. We're all people. It drives me crazy how stupid these liberals are. And I'm sorry, but it's the liberals.
Mr. X, I gotta push back a little bit though, man. Because listen, here's the deal. Here's the deal, man. Okay, we have had civil discourse for many years between Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, liberals, far right people. There has been solid discourse, but now. Okay, now that Donald Trump has been the president for 3 years, now all of a sudden it goes off the rails? Now all of a sudden nobody gets along?
Absolutely not. I remember prior to Trump being elected, gauging by my social media, when I ventured to say, I don't think that this Trump guy's that bad, I was called a Nazi and a racist.
But you're talking about Trump, though. You're talking about Trump. You're not talking about other people.
No, I'm talking about the liberals who were calling me that because of my opinion about a president.
But about Donald Trump, though. What I'm saying is that before Trump was...
They were saying I was. They were saying I was because It doesn't matter. No, listen.
But
man,
Trump's the trigger, Mr. X. That's what I'm trying to say. Trump is the trigger.
No.
It's not.
No, when
All the other dude, for years, there's been Republicans that have been presidents or been prominent guys. Nobody has had an issue and said, "Oh, you know what? I can't say hi to George Bush. I can't talk to Ronald Reagan.
No.
I can't talk to Dan Quayle. I can't talk to George Bush the first." You know what I'm saying? The reason it's Trump who is the trigger for a lot of us. Mr. X. I'm a never Trumper.
I like
yes.
this. This is nice.
Listen,
this is a nice debate. I can hear both voices. I'm very happy to be listening right now.
Listen, I've been in LA for 17 years.
Okay.
I remember very well during the W elections when you would drive around and see pictures of Bush painted on a wall with a swastika in the middle of his forehead. These liberals are way more militant and way more disgusting, frankly, than the other side. And I'm not a hard right. I'm not Christian. You can be JD and Shapiro can tell you I'm pretty middle of the road. But the abs even look at things like Mark Hamill's response to the picture that Ivanka or whatever posted of her kid. It's so much more personal. And I didn't see any of this when Obama was president from the conservative side. They didn't post pictures of Obama.
Oh, yeah. See, that's where I disagree with you, Mr. X. There have been a lot of stuff from people on the far right or out and out racists who have posted a lot of stuff about Barack Obama.
We know we have extremists in the United States.
On both sides. On both sides. And as Mr. X points out, they're on the left too.
And when Obama was president, there was definitely some KKK members.
Absolutely. There's people in the
and some very racist people who made some very racist comments. And it could probably be argued that since Trump has been president, sometimes his you can call it rhetoric. The tone, the things that he says, the way that he says things, aggressively and very, very bluntly, that can be impressionable to someone who is already an extremist and who thinks that they can act or that they'll decide that they want to act based on what he says because again he's so aggressive in that direction but I don't think that Barack Obama had any type of response compared to what Donald Trump does, and it seems to me like Hollywood. Which is and it's very interesting. There's this giant hypocrisy where liberals are supposed to be so accepting and they're supposed to be not fascist but the way that they're approaching this, it's almost like it's cultism. This hatred for Donald Trump is cultism and
McCarthyism.
I agree. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. X, but when a female, for example, wants to get in the industry and they aren't talented as an actress, they have to sleep their way into it. True or false?
Sure, to an extent, yeah.
And is that not the exact definition of what Hollywood is mad at Donald? Why is Hollywood so angry with Donald Trump when they're doing the exact same things he's doing? It's just not being reported, or it's accepted because they do make great movies. It is entertainment for people. I don't understand why the hypocrisy exists and where it originated from.
I think it's just human nature that when people have their own dirty little secrets and they see someone who is a reflection of that they lash out in a bigger way. And trust me, the Vince Vaughn thing, we laugh about it and it's on Twitter. He's going to lose work because of it.
100%.
All the time being in the industry and when I interview people and when I talk to people and just casual conversations, I'll talk to a makeup artist or a first AD and say, do you want to work with it? And then I don't know. I heard that guy's a Trump supporter. Things like that. That's pure insanity.
And let's think about this.
And the bottom line is let me ask you this: if this situation was different, and John Voight, who we know is a Republican, was photographed talking to Barack Obama when Obama was president, would there be a Twitter outcry?
Absolutely not. No one would care because
anything.
No, because Republicans, for the most part, understand that you need to be cordial in those situations.
They understand that speaking to someone on the other side could actually be beneficial. I bring this back to the Black Lives Matter thing. When that whole crazy nonsense was going down and everyone was so divided and people were there were riots and stuff. And I was like, you're not changing the other side's mind. Then when Snoop Dogg had his outreach in South Central and he invited all the police to meet with the gang members and have a barbecue, actually mingle with the people that they're supposed to hate and that the media drives this hatred for, that was productive. So it's the same thing. stop with all the nonsense of like Vaughn is a bad person because he talked to Trump. It's so stupid.
Well, and let's say that what does Vince Vaughn make a movie? Probably not as much as he made, during the Wedding Crasher era. We'll say maybe $250 to $2 million is my guess. Yeah. So if this costs him 2 movies, this could cost him $2 or $3 million just because he does not. Just because he doesn't even openly support Donald Trump, but he decided to shake Donald Trump's hand. He decided to take the opportunity to meet the president of the United States, who's actually been a pretty damn good president at the biggest college football game in the last probably decade, definitely the most watched college football game. But he decided to meet the president of the United States, and now he's going to lose $2 million for that. How is that? I mean, how is that at all reasonable?
I mean, if we're going to get into conspiracy theories that are not actual conspiracy theories, one of the biggest snubs at this year's Oscar nominations, sort of universally held, was Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. He was amazing. He's a Republican. He's not left wing. I don't know.
Mr. X joining us here
that's
live.
That's a very valid point. He just happens to be worth $500 million, and he has his own company, so he can create his own work.
Yeah, he does what he wants.
Big-time friend of the show, Mr. X, joining us here live in the Vegas Take. Chris Wynn in studio for Brian Shapiro, along with J.D. Sharp. He is the Hollywood conservative. You mentioned it, of course, the announcement of the Best Director nominations and many more awards when it comes to the 92 Oscars, Mr. X. Of course, a lot of talk about the lack of diversity once again, of course, with, as far as what I believe 10 out of the 12 nominees are actually males. That's on the gender side of things. And also there's been a lot of question as far as some of the support that they're getting. Actress Issa Rae had some comments, and Mr. X, I want to get your comments on this. We're going to run this real quick of what she had to say regarding the nominations for the 92 Oscars.
And Parasite, Bong Joon-ho.
Nice.
I did it. Thank you so much. Congratulations to those men.
So the sentiment is that, the men are getting all the love, Mr. X, and the women are getting hosed on this deal. You think about some of the movies that are being nominated for Best Picture. You think of The Irishman. You think of Todd Phillips as Joker. Of obviously Quentin Tarantino and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is up there as well too. But I got to get your thoughts on what Issa Rae says and kind of the perception of what's going down with the Oscars this year.
There's 3 layers to this. Layer 1 is all the men who were nominated completely deserved it. It's not even close. Mm-hmm. The only female-directed films this year that were even remotely decent were Little Women and The Farewell. Neither of them were directed. It's not even close. No woman deserved to be nominated Best Director this year, period, end of story. There were probably 3 other male-directed movies that could have been nominated for Best Director before I would even consider Gerwig or The Farewell. Now, so that's the truth. The next thing is, okay, so women aren't getting as good of director gigs in Hollywood. That's a fair argument, and I can see that being an issue. And, I can see that there's the issue of women aren't getting as good of roles, and, that's what a lot of these women sort of say. I don't think they're upset about the fact that it was 5 male nominees. It's the fact that the women weren't put in positions to do this. But then you can go to the next layer, which is Hollywood is an industry. It's a business. They follow the dollar. So if people in Arkansas and South Dakota wanted to watch women in these roles that men traditionally have, or wanted to watch female-directed films, they would. Nobody's stopping them from doing that. They would clamor for it, and they would flock to see these stupid movies like this stripper revenge movie that came out this year.
Hustlers.
But they don't. They don't. So the problem is not the problem's not the Academy. They nominated the 5 best directors. They did. They did a great job with that. You can say that the problem is the industry for not presenting women with these opportunities, but again, it's dictated by money. It's dictated by what people go see, and you can't just these studios and these independent studios have to make money. So this is not a charity. They're not just going to say, well, she's a woman and she hasn't gotten to direct anything good for a while, so let's let her direct this instead of Steven Spielberg. It doesn't work that way. People go see films that they want to go see, and that's an American cultural issue that really there's nothing anyone can do about. There's great female filmmakers out there and they make great films. Fantastic. And I encourage people to go and see them. What I don't encourage is forcing people to stomach lesser work that's done by a black man or a woman. It's just that's very un-American, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very un-American and it's very uncapitalistic. So, serious question here. I'm being told that Hustlers is a really, really, a role model type of movie for young women. Did you see it? And are you going to have your daughters watch it as well?
No, of course not. It was terrible. Like, listen, you'll never get a moral sort of answer from me about a movie, about like what, how those women were acting was right and wrong. I'm a filmmaker. I'm very against sort of like censorship and telling people what they should or shouldn't see. The only thing I care about is quality, and the movie was stupid. So like that's my thing. Like I wouldn't tell my daughter to see it because it sucks. But like if there was a similar movie that had the same thematic elements about these crazy strippers robbing, their clients, that's fine. Cool. Like if it's a good movie, I'm all for it. But like, it's just bad. That's my issue with it.
So 4 women have been nominated, of course. You have Lena Wertmuller for Seven Beauties, Jane Campion for The Piano, Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation, and Catherine Bigelow who actually won for The Hurt Locker. Catherine Bigelow also directed Point Break, if I'm correct, right? Point Break, she was the director of that?
Point Break, she did Zero Dark 30 or whatever it was called. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that the best female filmmaker out there right now is Lynn Ramsey. She did a movie called You Were Never Really Here about, I think, a year ago with Joaquin Phoenix. My favorite female-directed film of all time is one that many people don't know was directed by a woman, which is American Psycho with Christian Bale.
Wow, I didn't know that was directed by a woman either.
I know, it is.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. And it's an incredibly masculine, like borderline misogynistic film.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
And that's my point, is like, go see a great movie. And if a movie is great and a filmmaker is great, people are going to see their movies. And they're not going to care who directed it. And the bottom line is that right now, and I don't know why, maybe it is opportunities. I mean, maybe that's my own blind spot on this, is like, there is this, like, I guess, male-centric sort of, like, way that films are made, but that's not the case. Like, I'm in the industry. Like, if you are talented and have a good story to tell, you'll get an opportunity to tell it, man or woman.
So do you think that since Vince Vaughn got this totally negative reaction, he's going to lose work, do you think that this is going to deter other people from doing what he did? Or are people going to come out of the woodwork and say, screw this? We're going to think we're going to think what we want to think. We're going to do what we want to do. And if we're going to, I think it actually it's going to go in the direction where, are you kidding me? I can't even shake the president of the United States' hand. I mean, to me, that's completely unreasonable. And I think that there's other actors like Vince Vaughn or people involved in the industry who are going to actually do what he did more often. Because again, Trump has been a pretty good president. Just because De Niro doesn't like him, or Meryl Streep doesn't like him, or most of the United States doesn't like him. 98% of no, we'll call it those who happen to live in the Hollywood area code don't like him.
Well, the majority of the
that
United
doesn't
States
mean that Vince Vaughn, who isn't from California, by the way, he's from Illinois.
He's a Midwest guy.
He's definitely a Midwest guy, and he is libertarian, and he has some political views. So why can't, under those circumstances, why can't he shake the president's hand? And I think there's a lot of people, because again, all these guys who are these men and women in Hollywood, they all have money. They're all making money, and I would assume that they're building their wealth, intelligently. I would assume they're, for the most part, fiscally conservative. I guarantee they have accountants and they have someone investing their money for them. I mean, all of those things, they tie in with how Donald Trump is a capitalist and the things that he does for the country in that manner. And if you're making $5 to $10 million a year, why would you not want to be able to shake the president's hand, who is actually helping? But what do you think? What do you think the number of people in Hollywood are that are actually invested in the stock market, which right now is at 29,000, Mr. X?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think sadly it's going to depend on where the person's at in their career. I mean, if you're like The Rock, for instance, who we both know is pretty conservative,
right,
he's at a point where he's making so much money and people go see his movies that if he shakes Donald Trump's hand, people are like, oh, that sucks, The Rock, but we still love him, then somebody who's maybe starting out, or somebody who's maybe had one big movie and is trying to get their next one, if they lean a little bit more right, no way they're going to do that. Like, there's not going to, it's too important and too detrimental. I mean, especially if Trump gets elected again and the liberals out here are
which he is going to by an absolute landslide. It's not going to be close.
It's a lock for JD.
It's not going to be close.
It's a done deal.
Well, I mean, did you guys see that Bernie Sanders told Elizabeth Warren that a woman couldn't be president?
Yeah, we did see. We just talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's and then Mr. X. Then a video came out from 1988 where Bernie Sanders actually said, "By the way, I do think that a woman will not only run for president but be elected and handle the job very well." So Elizabeth Warren was just doing a publicity stunt there. That was just proven.
Oh wow. Yeah.
All right, so Mr. X, we've got Parasite, we've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Joker, 1917. I don't know how many of these movies that you've seen or if you've seen them all, but what is your favorite that came out of 2019?
It's close. This was an amazing year for movies. Like probably the best year in the last 15 years. And there was 4 or 5 movies that if they won Best Picture, I would just be ecstatic. Mm-hmm. My favorite by a small margin was 1917. It was just unbelievable. A close second was Joker, and then a close third was Parasite. If any of those, and I think it's going to be, I actually think right now the Best Picture is a 2-horse race between Parasite and 1917. If you kind of look into all the critic awards and all the other nominations they got, I actually think Parasite has a pretty good chance. Just everybody loves that movie, and it's amazing.
I'm fascinated by 1917 because look, we're in 2020, and there's a lot of young people out there, and that is a old school war movie, right, from World War I. It's very intriguing to me that movie has taken on such a monstrous presence basically in the last 2.5-3 weeks.
Well, I know it's shocking people liked it because it was directed by a man, but I mean, the bottom line is this is breaking news, but if you actually make a good movie, no matter what generation or sex or what of the 24 genders that you identify as, people will like it. I mean, that's the bottom line. A good quality movie is timeless and it will be loved. I mean, that's the thing. And it's just amazing. Like, you can't watch that movie and come out of it and just go, I mean, first of all, just be in awe at these young kids that put their lives on the line in this, in World War I, which I think had like the most deaths of any war in human history. And like, I mean, that's a timeless thing. And like, I think these guys everyone just kind of has to take a step back and just be in awe. And I know that Mendez made that movie based on a lot of the stories that his grandfather told him when his grandfather fought in World War I. So, I mean, like, of course people love it. It's a masterpiece,
He's the Hollywood conservative. He is Mr. X, and he joins us here on the Vegas Take numerous times. Always great to get his perspective on all things Hollywood and politics combined. And Mr. X joining us, and appreciate you spending some time, Mr. X. And hey, don't get caught on video shaking hands with President Trump or any other high-profile Republican, right? Because you could be in trouble.
Or do.
Start wearing a mask in public.
Or do.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Mr. X, have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. X.
The Vegas Take here, coming your way live on a Tuesday. Look, it's I pointed out to you, JD. I think that it's way overblown. Vince Vaughn sharing pleasantries with Donald Trump. I don't understand the vitriol. I don't understand people just hammering him, and I would not understand JD if he actually suffered some professional consequences, like didn't get movies. Just because of this one episode where he happens to be in a luxury suite. With
Chris,
the president.
be prepared to not understand that when he doesn't get any roles. And I think Mr. X is right. If Vince Vaughn, if this was during the Wedding Crashers era, where he was on the top of his career's kind of on the downswing. He's getting a little older. He's not getting those major roles, and I think that he's kind of being picked on because he's not at that level of an Adam Sandler. If Adam Sandler were to do this, no one would care. But again, Adam Sandler is making $20 million a film. He makes his own films, and the guy's worth $500 million. So I think that Hollywood is just kind of picking on Vince Vaughn because he's still trying to stay relevant in the industry.
That's JD Sharp. I'm Chris Wynn in for Brian Shapiro. You're tuned to the Vegas Take on your Tuesday. On the other side, John Schaefer and the news, and Gerald Gillick, attorney at law here in Las Vegas, as we continue on your Tuesday.